I'll call this Source Protection Authority meeting to order January 24th, 2018 at approximately 9:37. Presenting in Jamie Campbell's absence is Steve Miller. Steve, why don't you come to the podium while we go through the formalities of the adoption of the agenda. I'll need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Member Kasperset, seconded by Member Beatty. Any changes in the order? Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of the agenda? Opposed? And that's carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Members? Seeing none. Presentations and delegations. Welcome, Steve. I'll give you the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm here to walk you through two very brief reports. Okay. The first, quite simply, we had a vacancy on the Source Protection Committee for a member representing the industrial sector. Okay, so we put that out via social media, via ads. We had a number of respondents, and going through the candidates, we're recommending to you today to fill the Source Protection Committee industrial position a gentleman who has strong experience in the field, a strong background in dealing with water, surface water, groundwater quality issues. He's proven a communicator and has about 15 years experience. It's felt by the chair and the staff that this would be an ideal candidate to fill this position. Recall the Source Protection Committee supports yourself, the Source Protection Authority, in all things technical in the implementation of the Source Protection Plan.
Okay. Thanks for that, Steve. I'll open it up for question or comments, but please be mindful that any appointment is an identifiable individual. We will be going into closed session to discuss that business in camera. Any questions for Mr. Miller? Member Quirk?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Miller. We have the closed session items that have identified the individuals that are making recommendations. If we approve the order that is now and approve those, we would actually be approving them. So I'm wondering if it's necessary, unless anyone has any questions, I would move both reports for those appointments unless anyone wants to go into closed session to discuss the qualifications of the individuals.
That request is in order. I'll entertain any recommendations from the board. Member Beatty?
Thank you. Just a question. We have a circumstance where we've had a change in chair, but that person is here today, was on the committee from the beginning. This person hasn't been, and there has been so much that's happened. Is there an orientation process or a package that's prepared to try and give that person some history of where we were several years ago and all the steps that have been taken to develop the plan?
Mr. Miller, if you can answer.
Great. Thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. Absolutely. The intent is to there's a whole orientation process for a new individual. As a matter of fact, you might recall Mr. Biomead and Ms. Michaud that were confirmed appointments to the Source Protection Committee a couple of meetings ago. We are in the process of going through that orientation process in the next couple of weeks with those individuals.
Okay, I do have a recommendation on the floor by Member Quirk. Do I need a seconder for that? Seconded by Member Timms. Any questions or comments with respect to the intention of Member Quirk's motion? Seeing none, for the benefit of the gallery and the board, the motion put forward was to confirm the appointments. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that little update. We're going to get back to the order of the agenda right now. There are no presentations, administrative business. Yep, we got it. The approval of draft minutes. Can I get those minutes put on the floor, please? A mover and a seconder. Moved by Member Kasperset, seconded by Member McPherson. Any questions or comments with respect to those draft minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving? Opposed? And those draft minutes are approved. The draft watermark will be lifted. Any business arising from minutes? Correspondence, there is none. Business for consideration. We've just done that, but we're going to need a mover and a seconder to receive those reports for the official minutes. Moved by Member Shurton, seconded by Member Timms. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And I moved those in block, by the way, 6.21 and 6.2.2. Business in camera, we've alleviated ourselves with that process. Steve, why don't you just stand right back up and you can introduce some of your committee members that are with us this morning, just so we can recognize them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning with us, I'd like to introduce Ms. Ria Burko-Palladino. She's the chair of our Source Protection Committee. Very capable one at that, I might add.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I think that's all we have with us today. Yes, thank you. And absolutely, yes, I was remiss. Mr. Beatty is our liaison we have with us to this committee.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other business to, from Clerk?
Now that we've appointed these members, can we publicly declare who they are?
Which one are we going to?
Sorry, if
Yeah.
you just want to read or you want me to read the resolution.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Excuse me, through the chair. So the motion moved by Board Member Quirk and seconded by Board Member McPherson was actually to receive both SPA 1 and 2, and that the Source Protection Authority, being this body, appoint those people identified in Appendix 1. And the third recommendation was actually, that was approved, that the individuals' names be publicly released pending approval from those individuals. So.
Member Beatty.
I would like to commend our communication staff for the social media presence in terms of the fact that I don't think most people recognize that we act not only as the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, but also the Source Protection Authority. Most of the work being done, of course, by the Source Protection Committee. They're not an independent organization. We work well in harmony, and I think that the social media posts that I've seen on Facebook in the recent months have done a lot to tell the public what our basic mandate is. So appreciate that.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for that. And I concur. Fantastic job by our comm staff, and we appreciate all your work. So pending approval from the individual identified, we can publicly announce those names. So I'm going to assume that we've done that. Member Shurton?
Well, that's my, well, kind of a confused look here is if their names were given, I'm assuming they're willing to stand and accept. So I would assume staff has checked that we can announce it publicly, or we got to wait to another meeting?
No, I think we make the executive decision. We welcome our newest members to the Source Protection Board. And if Mr. Miller, you want to formally recognize them at this point, I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. The member for the industrial sector is Mr. Darren Fry. He is a director of strategic growth for Walker Environmental Group. So we're happy to have him aboard and look forward to working with him closely. The other appointments were more to address changes in the source protection regulation. The two municipal representatives, Councillor Paul Grenier and Councillor Tony Delamonte, their terms were set to expire in May and June. So the desire was to extend their term to a period after the municipal election, as is typically the case, December 31st, in order to account for any potential changeover. The other two appointments was for the agricultural sector, Mr. Robert Bader, and member at large, Mr. Adrian Williams. Both have demonstrated strong commitment and passion in their duties, undertaking their duties on the Source Protection Committee, and both expressed a desire to stay on in order to advance the this initiative to protect drinking water in Niagara.
Yes, I'd like to commend a member of the Source Protection Committee, Mr. Paul Grenier, and I would ask that the chair give some recognition through correspondence to him. He brought forward to the region of Niagara two very significant motions, one with respect to the Great Lakes and the concern for algal growth, and the second was a desire to have a cooperative amongst the various people in the region, communities, organizations who might have an interest in reforestation and planting trees and trying to work together to get a cooperative to get better prices on those trees. Both of those, I think, are significant initiatives, and he should be commended for his initiative in that regard.
Great comments, Member Beatty. I concur. I did bring those same congratulatory comments to my council in Fort Erie. As you know, being along the Lake Erie shoreline, it does have an impact with respect to algae blooms and the phosphate loads. So good work by Councillor Grenier, and as he is a colleague of all of ours, we look forward to continuing the good work that he does. Steve, thank you very much. Seeing no other business, I will ask for adjournment from the Source Water Protection meeting, moved by Member Kaspersets, second by Member DeFrucio. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you. We'll give a quick little 5-minute, and then we'll start right into the full authority board meeting. Thanks, everybody. Authority Board meeting for January 24th, 2018 to order at approximately 9:53. Welcome board members, welcome members in the gallery. It seems like yesterday we were here, doesn't it? I'd also like to advise all in attendance that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Our first order on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I will need a mover to add additional items to the agenda. I'm going to read out the additional agenda item, that the agenda be amended to add information report number 14-18 respecting 2017 Q4 capital projects update, and report number 15-18 respecting corporate resources Q4 2017 project status report to be dealt with immediately following agenda item 5.5. Can I get a mover for that, please? Moved by member Quirk, second by member Beatty. Questions or comments to the addition of those agenda items? Member Beatty.
Thank you. I'd like another agenda item. I'll walk on, just call it B project.
I'm sorry?
B project.
A B project?
Yep.
Okay. We have an additional item. Do you have a mover for that? Second by member Quirk, moved by member Beatty. Okay. Any other additions to the agenda at this time? Member Didati?
Yep, Mr. Chair, will we be going in, I see it, we don't have in camera here, or do we have in camera? Do we have in camera? I was looking at the
Member
source.
Didati, if you want to add any additional items which include in camera, I'll be more than happy to.
Okay, I didn't know, are we going currently in camera? Is there an agenda item?
We don't have anything on the agenda right now.
Yeah,
But,
if we could get an in-camera update, I'd appreciate that.
okay. Specific reason?
Yeah, on our legal proceedings, if we can just get updated
Okay, to
on
discuss legal proceedings, and did you want to specifically make it legal costs as well?
that. Yeah, please, if I
Okay,
could.
so we'll add that as far as legal proceedings and legal costs, add that to the agenda under closed session.
Thank you.
Member Kaspersets?
I'd just like to add possibly two items. First is the upcoming entrepreneurial awards night. I was wondering if we can direct staff to possibly get a table
Okay.
for that. And second, to direct staff to look at our permitting fees, to look at the possibilities of doing some type of a cost-plus arrangement on a
Okay.
base.
I'm going to entertain those under new business possibly,
Okay,
and
that's
because
fine.
they're staff direction, we can probably do that.
Okay,
They're not
thank you.
necessarily additional agenda items, but I'll go to you with respect to new business, and you can make those
Okay, thank you.
requests at that time. Member Didati, do you have a seconder? Moved by member Kaspersets. Okay, so those two additional items that I read out, member Beatty's B project, member Diodati with respect to legal costs and associated legal issues. All those in favor? Opposed? And those items are added to the agenda. I do have one change in order of the agenda. The clerk informs me that agenda item 5.6 needs to be dealt with under items for consideration as recommendations are included within the report. Therefore, can I get a mover and a seconder for the following resolution? That the agenda be amended to change agenda item 5.6 respecting the memorandum of understanding update to be dealt with under business for consideration immediately following agenda item 6.2.4. Moved by member McPherson, second by member Quirk. All those in favor? Opposed? And that agenda is amended. So now I need a motion to approve the amended agenda. Moved by member Beatty, seconded by member Kaspersets. All those in favor? Opposed? And the amended agenda is accepted. Thank you, board. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none, we have no presentations or delegations this morning. Fourth point on the agenda, administrative business, the approval of draft minutes. Can I get a mover to put those draft minutes on the floor, please? Moved by member Shurton, seconded by member Jeffs. Those draft minutes are on the floor for questions or comments. Any questions or comments with respect to the draft minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the draft minutes? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. So now we're doing those ones separate. Okay. Can I get a mover and a seconder to put the full authority annual general meeting minutes of January 17th on the floor? Moved by member McPherson, seconded by member DeFrucio. Question or comments? Member McPherson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I should have raised a question during the business arising from the minutes. Through you to the CAO. In the minutes, it is a point of clarification. In the minutes, we talk about the strategic planning meeting being a full authority meeting. And during the last NPCA full authority meeting, we set up committees for strategic, one of them being a strategic committee. So I'm just looking for a clarification on that particular two-day meeting. Thank you.
Mr. CAO?
We actually have two issues that we have to deal with because the terms of reference, I believe, currently have 5 members for the strat plan committee. We had almost everyone want to be part of that, so that matter will also have to be addressed. On February 15th and 16th, we're organizing a working session for the board members. As you are aware, the board owns the strat plan and the strat plan process. So it will be the board members who will initiate that process and have a 2-day working session with Todd McDonald of Performance Concepts to get us started. At that time, we'll be able to, provide high-level guidance and have a good discussion about what things we need to get focused on before we go out to the community.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with respect to the full authority annual general meeting minutes? Member Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. There was some conversation and questions about the floodplain group, and I'm just wondering now that Member Jeffs is here, I wonder if we could bring those questions up to her. Our decision at that time was to appoint everyone who was currently on the board to serve until the current floodplain was done, but I wasn't floodplain mapping for the Welland River. But we were going to ask Member Jeffs for any commentary about on a go-forward basis if we need new members for any different areas that are being floodplain mapped, or if it would be the same group.
Okay. Member Jeffs, you're the chair of that committee. Yeah, not to put you on the spot, just so the recommendation of the board was to just reappoint the same membership.
Yeah, I haven't given it a great deal of thought because we haven't really been doing, I don't know if these are. How's this? That's better. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we haven't had a meeting in several months, so I would say it's safe to just appoint I haven't had a lot of inquiries from my municipality with regard to it, from people outside of who's already been serving on the committee, and I see we have a couple members of that committee here today, so I'm fine with just reappointing those who have already served on that.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate those comments. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yes, that's right. Member Quirk, you still have the floor. You good?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Member Beatty. Yes.
Just to follow up on that, I think the other issue, if I remember correctly, that you're still the chairman of that committee. Are you aware of that? Wasn't April down as the chair?
I believe she was.
I just want to make sure you're aware that you're the chair.
To clarify, as with all reconfirmations, once the individual board or committee meets, there'll be an opportunity within that new membership to elect a chair. So yes, you were chair previous, but going into...
But I never chaired a meeting. When we'd have those meetings, I believe it was either yourself or Board Member Timms who chaired the meeting. So I don't know if that's an error that I'm the chairperson.
Possibly.
And that's been something that's been carried through because I've never chaired a meeting. So maybe that's something that I'm glad you pointed that out. And
we will correct those minutes then, because the minutes came forward as recognizing you as the chair of that previous committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Member Beatty. Any other question or comments with respect to those draft minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting them? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Any other business arising from those minutes? Yes. Great point. So we understand that we need to reconcile some of our policies. So the Strat Plan Committee called for membership of up to 5 members. There was an overabundance of excitement to sit on that board, and I think we extended ourselves to at least 7 or 8 board members. So what we're going to have to do is redefine those terms of reference. So if someone would like to make that motion, Member Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that the terms of reference from the Strategic Plan Steering Committee be amended to make the membership equal to the members who want to participate on the steering committee. If I can get a seconder to that, I speak to it.
Seconder, please. Member Beatty.
So just very briefly, in terms of speaking to that, the Strategic Plan Steering Committee previously had brought forward the action plan and the time frame going forward, which this board accepted and ratified. The going forward process of determining the strategic plan does involve all of us. It's not just the steering committee. It is actually the entire board that will be working through on the working sessions. So the strategic planning committee was basically there just to receive work with the consultant to receive the recommendations back before forwarding them on with recommendations to the full authority. So the steering committee, as I understand it, won't have a lot of work to do, even with the extra members, any more work than the whole board will have in terms of reconciling the new strategic plan with the current strategic plan and the work of the consultant. So I don't see that committee needing to meet too often outside of what we're going to be doing with our strategic plan as a board as a whole. So,
okay. Thank you for those comments. Mr. Barrett? Member Quirk, friendly? Yeah, okay, so we'll make that adjustment. Okay, any other question or comments with respect to that item of business arising from the minutes? Member Beatty?
I do. It is a request for a staff action in prior to our session on this. I would ask that staff research through Conservation Ontario what initiatives currently are being deployed by other conservation authorities with regard to climate change matters, and have discussion with staff at the region and Brock University with regard to other activities being undertaken in Niagara with regard to climate change. I think we should have that information prepared prior to. I personally think the climate change issues should be part of the next round of strategic plans.
All great comments. Right now we're going to deal with the motion that's on the floor right now to adjust the terms of reference. Any other questions with respect to adjusting the terms of reference? Member Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think last meeting we discussed how we were going to deal with the funds that have been held in reserve because of the ruling from with regard to apportionment.
Hold your thought.
And I think we deferred that to this committee.
Hold your thought. Right now we have a motion on the floor to adjust the terms of reference. Is your question specific to adjusting the terms of reference and expanding
the terms of reference include discussing that subject?
No, we are discussing just
Okay.
the membership
Just the
compilation
membership?
right now, so that's on the floor right now. But
All right.
hold your comment, and I'll get to you in 2 seconds. Seeing no other comments with respect to Member Quirk's motion, duly moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Member Timms, you still have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify what the approach we were going to take to dealing with the funds. I think it was outlined in the last report. There's 1.2 million held in reserve for Niagara and 330 something held in reserve to Hamilton. All of those coming as now are available because of the ruling on the apportionment. And I think our last discussion was that we were going to defer discussion of how to deal with that to this strategic plan committee. So if someone could help me how we decided to deal with that.
So I'll update you a little bit, and it's a great point that you're raising. But actually, Member Dart moved a motion to defer any decision on the disposition of those funds for 1 month. Since that time, we do understand that Hamilton will be exercising their rights to not necessarily appeal the decision, but go through a judicial review period. So it's probably inappropriate to be commenting about the disposition of those funds right now, as we don't know what the final disposition will be pending Hamilton's involvement. So I hope you can respect that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that reminder, and I look forward to sort of a timeline, as I know Regional Council will be anxious to deal with it.
Absolutely.
But this clarifies the time of the next step, and as you say, is to hear from any results of this judicial review that has Hamilton formally requested by motion of Hamilton Council. Is that where we are?
Well, I respect the decisions of our Hamilton representatives, and they brought information forward to suggest that Hamilton will be exercising that right. Whether or not there's a formal resolution coming from Hamilton Council, I don't know yet. If Member Beatty wants to speak to it, or Member Kaspersets. Beatty, sorry.
Hamilton Council unanimously voted to proceed with judicial review of the mines award. However, they also asked that staff and legal staff in particular research it and come back with an interim report before they proceed. I think that's how it stands now. Is that your understanding, James?
Member Tibbs? Yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Member Quirk?
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification with Member Timms, I think the discussion and the motion was to defer until the February board meeting, which would occur after our strategic planning working group session. So although it wasn't referred specifically to the committee to make a disposition, it was to be included in potential discussions during the strategic plan working session when we talk about financial impacts of any of the strategic plans that we go forward. So it'll still be the full board that'll be having that conversation at the strategic plan working sessions, but the decision won't come back until that'll take place before the next board meeting, which is when Member Dart deferred the discussion to. Again, it might all be moot until we know what the actual status of the judicial review is.
Thank you for those comments. Any other business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda to correspondence. Under correspondence, we have a letter dated January 2nd, 2018 from the City of St. Catharines to Premier Kathleen Wynne respecting Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority appointment of a supervisor. Can I ask that that letter be received? Moved by Member Timms, seconded by Member Diodati. Question or comments to that item of correspondence? Member Timms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The letter from St. Catharines, I think, is unfortunate in that they had previously decided to ask their staff for a very thorough report on and recommendations and comment on the performance of the Conservation Authority, and there were a number of questions that they wanted addressed. So I was disappointed to see that they kind of reversed that, though it was ruled in council as not a reconsideration. But they took an opportunity at the meeting that this motion rises from, to request the supervisor without any comment, report, or advice from their own staff. It has been a continuing concern of mine that this city council is not interested in staff opinion, report, or comment on the Conservation Authority, even though we have, for a number of years, had that memorandum of understanding that makes the city part of the agreement with the region, the NPCA, and the city, all 12 Niagara cities. So it's a constant refusal to spend any city staff time to get any kind of comment, report, or advice on Conservation Authority issues. So once again, the letter has raised a concern, raised the desire of council to have the province step in without any comment from their own staff. I'm frustrated with that. I've appeared at council a number of times. The time that you and as chair and Mark and I attended, we thought we had received and got approval from council to get some comment and some advice, and that was overturned a number of meetings later. The comment in the letter has to been something about a member of the NPCA provided misleading information. Again, with no backup, no advice or no comment on what that was. So it's a continuing frustration I have with City of St. Catharines Council. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and I can speak to the involvement that Member Timms has had with the City of St. Catharines. He has been an excellent representative for the City of St. Catharines, and he's been more than willing to discuss the facts and present all the information to that council. So to Member Timms' point, it is an unfortunate situation, but keep up the good work, Member Timms, because at some point, hopefully they will accept the good advice that you're providing them as the conduit to that council, to this board. Any other question or comments? Member Beatty. Okay.
Well, the first paragraph, haven't we established from the Premier that a supervisor will not be appointed? And didn't they confirm that by not putting it in the act?
So I'm going to take that as a question. I'm going to respond to that.
Yeah.
Yes. The province is not interested in appointing a supervisor. Ultimately, we are one of 36 conservation authorities located throughout the province of Ontario. It is not something that was accepted by Conservation Ontario. It's not something that's been accepted by any of our brother or sister conservation authorities. As a matter of fact, the Premier has gone on record to say that she's not entertaining that. Further to that point, Bill 139 specifically addresses that issue. Amendments were tried to make, there were amendments put forward to give that ability. They were all voted down. As you know, Bill 139 has passed royal assent, and it has no language in there to allow the appointment of a provincial supervisor. I would like to further add that this conservation authority receives 4% of its funding from the province. It is drastically different than the theme that we keep hearing about. They've done it with hospitals, they've done it with school boards. Those institutions are fully funded by the province. This conservation authority receives 4% of its funding from the province. It is not an apples and oranges situation, and in my estimation, highly inappropriate to keep making that motion. So I hope that answers your question, Member Beatty.
Yes. And hopefully the members who sit on Niagara councils will take that message back to your council, like, stop kicking the dead horse. Please. I find it very unsettling that, well, it's Niagara's problem. I'll stop the comments there. So the second paragraph, are we going to answer it? It asks us and the regional council to address the issue.
Okay.
I don't know what that means, but if they're accusing one of our members, I can't imagine one of our members going before them and giving them misinformation unless they didn't understand the information. Because I think we've been straight up, at least everything I've read, that we've been pretty straight up with all the councils in Niagara.
Yeah.
So
we have always provided every council, through every delegation, through all the correspondence information that we pass on to our partner municipalities, we have always been very factual and very honest. Unfortunately, the information in the correspondence is ambiguous, it's accusatory, it doesn't shed any light on what the accusation is, and I think it's done that way purposely.
I've sat here for 3 years, and it's like somebody picking at the back of my ear. All this stuff coming out of your Niagara councils. And I assume you can't straighten it out, and I know it's an election year. I understand election years. We had an example of it yesterday at Hamilton Council. But they just keep doing, this is crap. And they keep doing it. Good luck.
Thanks for your comments, Member Beatty. Any other question or comments with respect to the item of correspondence? CEO Brickell, and then Member Maloney. Let me go to Member Maloney first, CAO, and then we'll get to you.
My
Member
comments
Maloney?
were on the second paragraph of the resolution. I mean, aspersions have been cast by a member of the Niagara Regional Council and the Conservation Authority, which we would suggest are untrue, but it's incumbent upon us to request clarification of exactly what the misinformation was.
Well, I can
we should
provide.
let it pass.
I can provide some details on that. Specifically, I think they were addressing concerns of the chair, myself, who presented in front of Waynfleet Council as well as St. Catharines Council. And the question asked specifically of me was, why did I turn down the Auditor General in a January conversation? As you know, the Auditor General has appeared right inside this horseshoe, and that question was asked specifically of her. The answer was quite clear. No one turned down the Auditor General in January. No one turned down an offer to have the Auditor General involve herself in the Conservation Authority. It was a matter of timing. Those were her words, not my words. No one presented misleading information to St. Catharines Council or Waynfleet Council. I will stand by those comments. I did not turn down the Auditor General in a January conversation. I do not have the unilateral authority to turn down, let alone agree to, her involvement. So I hope that clarifies that situation, Member Maloney. And I think that's what that passage specifically is speaking to.
It clarifies it to us, but not necessarily to St. Catharines Council.
Oh,
Can we
they've
not be more specific to St. Catharines Council?
Well, we have made those same comments to St. Catharines Council. Sometimes it's not an issue whether or not they receive an answer. It's an issue of whether or not they like the answer that they're receiving. I've addressed that situation. I stand by my comments. There was nothing misleading about them, and there was no misinformation relayed to our host municipal partners. So I'm hoping that they accept that at face value, and I am grateful to say that the AG is working very diligently in our offices. She has full access to any and all information, and we look forward to her tabling her report, and anything with respect to interests of the public, I'm sure will be in her report that's tabled in the House. Any other questions or comments with respect to that piece of correspondence? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting it? Opposed? And when that is accepted. Okay, Chairman's remarks. I think I've probably made a lot of Chairman's remarks already with respect to some of the correspondence that we get. But I will like to reiterate my gratitude and my thanks to this board for reconfirming my position as chair. Thank you for your confidence. We did have an opportunity to address Hamilton City Council in a budget presentation yesterday. It was very well received. Unfortunately, we were fourth on the agenda under some other conservation authorities that were bringing some bad news to Hamilton as well. I will reiterate my position with Hamilton. We come there as conscientious partners. There is no acrimony or animosity on this side of the table. We respect the decisions of that council. They are elected to fight for the citizens of Hamilton, especially when it comes to taxation and the burden of taxation. So I do not hold that against them at all with respect to their outrage and certainly their discontent. My message to them was quite clear. Please redirect it at the appropriate body, and that would be the province of Ontario. If there's a change in the formula that all conservation authorities are mandated to now adopt, then that sense of discontent has to be addressed at the provincial level, certainly at the ministry, and those people in charge of crafting that language. I will say this, though, through a 2-year period of consultations through Bill 139, that probably would have been the appropriate opportunity to actually express the concerns of Hamilton. Unfortunately, Bill 139, as you know, did receive royal ascension in December. I'm hoping that the City of Hamilton can work conscientiously with their members of provincial parliament and address those concerns. But again, the discontent should not be directed at this conservation authority. We have an obligation and a duty to the residents of our watershed as well. And I'm very grateful that we've stood up for Niagara taxpayers, who, in my estimation, have been overpaying for quite some time. So to our members in Hamilton, thank you for your diligence and thank you for your representation. It's been very effective. We've heard loud and clear that Hamilton is not happy with the situation, and we look forward to building the relationship back with Hamilton. But again, please don't direct your anger towards the NPCA. It should be directed at the province. Any other questions or comments with respect to the chair's comments? Member Beattie? I'm pretty sure their anger is going to be directed to the other NPCA. Yeah, I agree. Oh. I think that's pretty much it with respect to our comments, my comments anyways. But if I think of anything else, I'll be sure to inform this board. But again, thank you for your confidence in moving forward. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the direction of this board. I'm very excited about our 8-point initiatives, and I'm very excited about the reception that it's received. I go through lower level municipalities, and they're excited about tree planting. They're excited about the opportunities that are out there, especially with respect to climate change. So I encourage all this board to keep engaging your lower tier municipalities. Let them know the good news that we're trying to do over here, and we're going to move forward in a very positive fashion. So thank you. That leaves us to our CEO comments. Mr. Brickell.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my comments quite brief. Really appreciated, actually, the reception we received from the City of Hamilton. I thought they were very fair in their comments. They also expressed appreciation for the improvements that we have made to date with respect to our business and management processes and systems. They also seem to show appreciation for the responsible budget we were submitting, recognizing that, in fact, that their issue is not directly with us, but is, in fact, with provincial legislation. They were very respectful. They listened. I think the chair did a great job of expressing empathy for Hamilton's situation, and the very fact that they have taken on an increase of $2-point-something million through this reapportionment. And I think that the chair did an excellent job of conveying the empathy and recognizing that if the roles were reversed, that Niagara would likely be doing the same thing. So I thought that came across really clearly. Also just want to highlight a meeting we had this week with the Friends of Fort Erie Creeks. They are in receipt of a Trillium grant, a pretty large one, to undertake to take down some trees and replant some trees and do some work along the Fort Erie Lakeshore. And they want to do that in partnership with us and with the and that work at Stevensville Conservation Area and the club there. So we had a wonderful discussion, and Chair, to your comment just now, we walked them through at the start of the meeting the 8 initiatives. And again, they said, we really appreciate you talking about those 8 initiatives because, we've heard all the stuff going on at the NPCA, but we are really excited about your initiatives. And when we hear these things, we can tell you that we want to be partners with you. We want to work closely with you. And we went on to have a really productive meeting about exploring a new relationship and what it's going to be like. And their words could not have been kinder about this board and about the NPCA and those initiatives. So those initiatives, we're continuing to see that they have a lot of power and that they succinctly capture the core work of this authority. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Brickell. And just to clarify, it was a Trillium grant of $212,000 that the Friends of Fort Erie Creeks received, and in cooperation through the Stevensville Conservation Club and the NPCA, we're thrilled for them and happy for them, and looking forward to the partnerships that are going to evolve from that. So congratulations to the Friends of Fort Erie Creeks and their hard work in putting that application forward. So any question or comments with respect to our CEO's comments? Thank you, Mark. Business for information. So if members are agreeable, I'd ask for these items to be moved in block. If not, we can deal with them individually, but Member Quirk? Okay, so all moved in block with respect to 5.1 to 5.5. Can I get a seconder for that? Moved by Member Kaspersets. Those are moved in block. Any questions or comments with respect to those individual reports, financial and reserve report? Member Timms?
Just a comment on the community engagement report. I think it's very well done, and it does reflect a significant progress on the process of community engagement. The reporting is well received. I really did appreciate seeing the extent of to which we have continued the community engagement, and pleased to see that as a result of our really springs from our strategic plan and the approach we wanted to outline and implement. So it's well worth reading and having a look at. I don't know if we can make use of our social media approach to make that one sort of up front and center, because I think it does reflect the approach that this board has taken as a result of implementing our strategic plan. Thank you.
All good comments, Member Timms. Thank you. Any other question or comments with respect to those items that were moved in block? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And those are received. Thank you. Going to 5.6, that's the one, Member Quirk.
Oh, he said save and accept because we moved it when we changed the order of the
Oh, okay.
agenda.
Okay. All right. So where are we right now then? We're here?
We're in consideration, I guess.
Okay. Member Quirk?
Sorry, Chair, I'm just looking at the list that I moved. I didn't see the two other reports that were the capital projects. I think we need to move and receive that one, and the project status report. Reports 1418 and 1518, I might be looking at an old agenda, I apologize, but they were to be added for information as well. So I would move those two for information.
Yeah. Okay. So, are these in here? Yeah.
Sorry, I move that we receive report 1418 regarding capital projects update, and report 1518 corporate resources Q4 project status report received for information.
Okay, appreciate that. And just for the benefit of the board, those are the two walk-on items that we had, that we adjusted that we added to the agenda just before the meeting started. Any question or comments with respect to those? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those are approved. Seconder for that, Member Quirk. We'll give it to Member Kasperseth. Member Kasperseth, you okay with that? Seconding that? Okay, Member Kasperseth. Okay.
If I can just highlight one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Just to the year-end numbers in for the strategic initiatives team, and I just would point out to you that the new revenues coming out of strategic initiatives this year were just over 100,000, 107,000. Really quite remarkable for that team, and just want to express my appreciation to staff for their work bringing that about.
Thank you for that. Member Quirk?
I know we've just received them, but I just also wanted to thank staff with respect to the capital projects update. If you look at the number of projects that are actually completed in year, the carryovers going into to 2018 are by far a lot fewer than we've had in the past, and I appreciate the work that the staff in operations and the CAO have done in getting that sort of capital list back on track so that we don't have the carryovers that we've seen in the past. So thank you for that.
Good comments, Member Quirk. It's a very well-done report, and I encourage all board to familiarize themselves with it. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is business for consideration, committee reports, audit committee minutes. That the audit committee minutes of the meeting held on December 12, 2017 be approved as presented. Can I get a mover for those, please? Moved by Member Diodati, seconded by Member Jeffs. Questions or comments to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And those minutes are carried. Thank you. The second set of minutes, Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Advisory Committee, that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Advisory Committee minutes of the meeting held on November 30th, 2017 be approved as presented. A mover, please. Moved by Member Diodati, second by Member Beatty. Questions or comments? Member Jeffs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under other business, 5.1 of the minutes, it said one of the members had expressed concern about social media, and then there was a line in here, it's difficult to build positive community outreach when comments are circulated by NPCA board members. So is he referencing board members commenting in the media or commenting on social media, or do we know, were you there when this comment was made?
I was there, I did chair the meeting, and I think it was in response to some comments that Member Quirk actually was making to correct the record on social media. So that's an issue I informed our committee member that I would raise with Member Quirk. Member Quirk has assured me that there was nothing negative or nothing that could be construed as inappropriate, and I did verify that there is nothing on social media that this board member or any board member has engaged in that is inappropriate in any nature whatsoever. It's simply correcting the facts. Mark?
With respect to social media, I'd also want to seek board opinion, but we've been getting a lot of positive feedback on our social media of late, and I want to credit Erica Navarro in particular, Erica Navarro. She's one of our communication specialists, and she's been doing an exceptional job of managing our social media and changing the public narrative and public messages. She does a tremendous job of acknowledging even negative comments that are made, to receiving those, to thanking people for submitting those comments, and then redirecting them to factual information and moving them to the more positive aspects. Very often the naysayers have been withdrawing their comments, and even in some cases removing those negative comments once they've been better informed, and I would specifically thank Erica for the work she's done on that.
All good comments. Member Jeffs?
Oh, it wasn't on? Okay, sorry about that. So with respect to that, is it, because I know that certain people do comment on social media who are members of the board, and would it be better if that was directed through our communication staff? Because I know our former communications, I think it was Kevin Vallier had said a couple of years ago that the board we all just would comment on our own, comment to the media, and I know that we've been trying to funnel things through the communications, but this comment kind of struck, because there have been other comments made about everybody just commenting. So is that something that we're continuing to work on, to have kind of one voice?
So absolutely, I mean, and I'm going to utilize Member Campion's comments from, I believe, last year. He represents the city of Welland first and foremost. I'm sure every mayor understands that, but we do have a fiduciary responsibility to uphold the policies of the NPCA. We have hired an incredible communications team, and I encourage board members, if you do have any concerns or comments that you need some clarity on, that you would like some help with in crafting a message, our communication staff stands ready. So with respect to social media, no one can really control what goes on social media, but I would encourage this board certainly to utilize the competent staff that we have, and that's the message that I keep reiterating over and over and over again. A lot of times there's incorrect comments on social media. If you want to capture those and direct them to our very competent communication staff, they'll be more than happy to address them on our behalf. So I hope that answers your question. Member Quirk.
Thank you. Just to that point, I will point out that on social media, often we get tagged with comments that are false, inaccurate, or misleading, and we get called out on social media to say, what is your opinion? As an elected official, I will never be shy of sharing my opinion. That's one of the advantages of having elected officials on this board. We are expected to share our opinion, and especially when people are making false, misleading, and erroneous remarks and comments about this, some of them based on false, misleading, and erroneous information and other issues. And some people just decide that they want to keep repeating those again and again on social media and calling us out on it. When I'm called out on social media, I intend to respond. I make it very clear that I'm responding in my capacity as Tony Quirk, individual, elected official, regional councillor, a member of this board. I don't speak for regional council, I don't speak for this board, but my opinion is worthwhile and people are asking it, so I will share that. And I will continue to share that until I'm no longer an elected official, at which point I will share it broadly and much more wider, and using different language than I choose to use now. But at this point, I will say that I think our communication staff is excellent. I think the work they do on their social media stream is fantastic. When it shows up on my social media stream, I share it repeatedly so that it goes to a larger audience so they can see the good work that the authority is doing. But I will continue to correct the record when it is completely and totally misconstrued by people in social media who think they are smarter than they actually are.
Thank you for those comments. Again, I will reiterate, for the benefit of this board, if you do have any questions or concerns with comments that you see on social media, by all means utilize the very competent staff that we have. If you feel necessary to correct the record on your own, follow the policy. Be respectful, be truthful, and by all means have at it correcting the record. And that's the only expectation I have of this board. So I hope that clarifies that situation. So thank you. Member Jeffs, do you still have the floor? Are you good? Okay. We had the minutes duly moved and seconded. All those in favor of accepting those minutes? Opposed? And those minutes are accepted. Thank you. The next report is the annual bank borrowing resolution. That report number 10-18 respecting the annual bank borrowing resolution 2018 be received, and whereas section 3(5) of the Conservation Authorities Act authorizes conservation authorities to borrow such monies as may be required until the payment of any grants and levies, and whereas the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority deems it appropriate to borrow such sums with the total borrowed amount not to exceed $800,000 at any one time in the year of 2018 to meet approved administration, maintenance, and capital expenditures, now therefore be it resolved that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority be authorized to borrow from time to time from a financial institution by way of an overdraft agreement executed and signed by the Chair and the Secretary-Treasurer of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority with the total amount not exceeding $800,000 at any one time in 2018 to meet approved administration, maintenance, and capital expenditures. Can I get a mover for that, please? Moved by Member Quirk, seconded by Member Diodati. Question or comments? Member Quirk.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to highlight that although we have this facility available to us, that we have not used it in the last 8 or 9 years, I believe. It is just a standard operating agreement that we have with our lending institution. In fact, we have monies on deposits, and our deferred revenues are more than covered by cash in the bank and short-term instruments as recommended by PSAB, so that we have enough cash on hand to operate both the organization from an operating reserve point of view as well as our capital plan go forward. So this is basically just housekeeping, and I don't want anyone to think that the authority is borrowing money that it doesn't need to, considering the fine financial shape we find ourselves in.
Appreciate those comments. And again, this is not the authorization of $800,000. This is just, to Member Quirk's point, a housekeeping amendment in the event that it's on the books and we do have access to those funds. Any other question or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, floodplain mapping project update in the City of St. Catharines, supported by the National Disaster Mitigation Program, report number 11-8. I'll read the resolution and ask for a mover and seconder. That report number 11-8 respecting the floodplain mapping update in the City of St. Catharines, Walker Creek, and Beamer Creek, supported by the National Disaster Mitigation Program, be received. That NPCA staff be directed to commence a floodplain mapping project to update floodplain mapping in the City of St. Catharines, Walker Creek, and Beamer Creek, and that the NPCA board authorize the CAO to enter into an agreement with the Province of Ontario through the National Disaster Mitigation Program, NDMP, for 50% or up to $50,000 of matching funds to undertake the above project, and that the NPCA board direct staff to utilize the Flood Protection Services Capital Reserve account to cover the remaining portion of the cost associated with the project. Can I get a mover for that? Moved by Member Timms, seconded by Member Diodati. Question or comments? We'll go to Member Timms and then Member Jeffs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do wish to thank staff and the I guess the province and whoever the funding sources are to make this project move forward. It is important, I think, specifically in this watershed where the city's direction is intensification That is to find any opportunity to add townhouses in a lot that was otherwise a single-family dwelling. And so the opportunity to update this and make sure that the floodplain lines are accurate, given the current, change in climate, change in extreme storms, it's very appropriate. So I want to thank the Conservation Authority for moving this forward. We'll answer one of the City Council questions about what do we get for our $1.9 million. Well, this is a good project to show them. I have a couple other questions, though, with regard to this, is the floodplain mapping of the 12 Mile Creek. It seems to be, to me, would be more, or is urgent because of the condominium projects being proposed at the mouth of the 12 Mile Creek. And I did speak with Mr. Miller that I guess there is a mapping of the 12 Mile Creek that is, I guess, in place, but perhaps you could update me on that. And the second comment was that because of the condominium locations are more likely on the Lake Ontario floodline map, which is MNRF instead of Conservation Authority. So, Mr. Chairman, could we have some clarification on the status of the 12 Mile Creek?
I'll turn to our CAO, but fortunately Mr. Miller is in the audience as well, but I'll leave it to Mark to delegate.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Staff are making the recommendation based on where they believe the greatest need is. Recognizing your comments with respect to 12 Mile Creek, and I'll have Steve comment on that in just a moment. But yes, once we get out to Lake Ontario, then we are into MNRF jurisdiction and their responsibility. But Steve, if you can add to that.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. No, thanks for the question. With respect to 12 Mile Creek, 12 Mile Creek starts in the Short Hills area, Pelham, Thorold, upper 12 Mile, winds its way through, flows past the DQ generating station, the tail race, makes its way north in that big incised valley you see, the 406, the big thundering waters, and then into Martindale Pond, out into Lake Ontario, past the Hayward generating station. It drops 10 feet over that generating station and out into Lake Ontario. The condo development in question is downstream of the generating station and subject to Lake Ontario 100-year flood levels, which are given to the conservation authorities by the Ministry of Natural Resources. The Conservation Authority does have floodplain mapping for upper 12 Mile Creek to try and protect lives and property of folks that live in and around the Short Hills area. But once you flow past the DQ generating station, that stretch of water, that stretch of 12 Mile Creek between DQ and the Haywood generating station at the mouth of Martindale Pond is owned by Ontario Power Generation and the City of St. Catharines. The flows through there are strictly regulated by Ontario Power Generation through the DQ generating station. They don't exceed approximately 200 cubic meters per second. So when we get a big punch of rain during, say, the 100-year storm event, Ontario Power Generation throttles back the flow through DQ, so it never exceeds that flow in order to protect the lands in and around their channel leading to Martindale Pond. So that aside, we all know it's Ontario Power Generation owns land on either side of it. 12 Mile Creek is within a steep valley. There's no development that's anticipated or proposed. No private houses are going to be built alongside there. So the need to generate the 100-year flood lines in order to protect people and property from flooding, in that case of lower 12, doesn't exist. So that's why the Conservation Authority hasn't generated flood lines for that portion of 12 Mile up to this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In researching that question, I was looking for the floodplains, but I also noticed that there are watershed reports, watershed management reports on a number of our watersheds throughout the region. And I didn't see one for the 12 Mile Creek watershed plan on our website. And I did ask Mr. Miller about that, and apparently there is a plan, but it's not on our website. Could I ask, through you, if Mr. Miller could explain what the situation is with that? Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the question. Indeed, 12 Mile Creek does have its own subwatershed plan. We have generated many for our subwatersheds within our jurisdiction. Some are on the website, some are not. And that's recognized, and that's one of the reasons that the Conservation Authority is going out in an effort to update our website to address deficiencies just like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, how old is that plan? As I know there's been, at least in Pelham at the headwaters of the 12 Mile Creek is making significant developments, and we did a deep water storm pond there specifically because this development was happening at the headwaters of 12 Mile Creek. So how old is the plan, and how could we make it available to the public?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. The plan was generated in the early 2000s. I can get you an exact date. I don't have it off the top of my head. But should folks wish it, they could simply contact the Conservation Authority and we can send out a hard copy to them or a digital copy via CD, whatever their preference.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one final point. There is, a couple of years ago, we published the 12 Mile Creek Landowner Stewardship Guide. And I would like to see a reprint of it because I think we're out. So there, I think it was published in 2016, says first edition.
Okay.
So it's, I don't think there's any more available, and it is, I think, a valuable asset that the public should be able to get a hold of in the paper version. So if we can get a reprint of that, I'd appreciate it.
So what I will, thanks, Mr. Miller, I appreciate that. So what I will do is I'll confer with staff. I'll get staff to come back with some information on costing. Anytime there's an expenditure that goes into printing, I think the board should have first glance to see what that's going to cost. But I'll get that information for you, Member Timms.
Thank you. We do have a similar for Walker's Creek, and that's the one we're doing the flood plan mapping on now. So I think they're a valuable asset for the public to be able to see. I don't know if they're online too in their full version, but that may be possible as well.
Okay, we'll take that as staff direction. Mr. Brickell?
Thank you. A couple things I want to say to that. One, we are reevaluating all paper materials right now to determine which ones we continue to need in hard copy and which ones can be provided through other means. Obviously, anything that we can provide via the internet is probably the best way to get information out and to make it most easily available to the greatest number of people. But we do look at these on a case-by-case basis to determine which ones we actually need to print and which ones we don't. The other thing I want to remind board members of, and again referring back to our 8 initiatives, is that there is a plan there to actually develop a 100-year water quality improvement plan. That's going to be a comprehensive plan for the watershed, and so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves because we're going to put an organized plan and framework to how we're working with throughout the watershed with respect to water quality.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just asking that we catch up a bit. I know in dealing with property owners along either one of these watersheds, it's very helpful to have a hard copy to be able to put in front of them and show them the recommendations on stewardship. Because we do have, we have jurisdiction over slope stability, what you can plant on slopes, what you plant or do approaching the buffer zone around a creek. So these hard copies are very helpful, and I would ask that it be given a priority and not be postponed as we consider many other approaches.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Member Jeffs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I've asked this question before about this particular project, 'cause I think this came up, we had a brief report on it a while ago. But are the residents aware of this and okay with this? Because I see there are, I think it says about 113 private properties in this zone. So just because of what I've had to deal with.
Sure.
In Waynefleet, and Mayor Joyner's not here today, but the same in West Lincoln. Sometimes these things, there's an undertaking and then people aren't aware of it and then they find out after the fact or just before something's approved. So I just wonder if there was any public consultation, what that looked like. And I think when I asked the question before, the city of St. Catharines was fully supportive, but so I just want a confirmation.
Okay. Mr. Miller, public engagement?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, great question. Absolutely. One of the things the Welland River floodplain mapping exercise taught us was the need for robust public consultation. And in this proposed project, there will be public consultation at the initiation of the project, at the halfway point of the project, and at the completion of the project, to give people a chance to, one, understand about the project, ask questions about the project, and to inform the study team about their own experiences. Folks living along the watercourse bring that frontline perspective. And then at the end, to see where the floodlines are, to understand what the floodlines are, and understand what that means in terms of policy. The exact same approach is being undertaken in the Lincoln and Grimsby floodplain mapping study that was just cut loose. So yes, we fully understand the need. The experiences from the Welland River floodplain mapping exercise are being brought forward in all these future floodplain mapping exercises.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Member Jeffs? Yeah. Member Quirk?
Thank you. Just to that point as well for, we talked about the membership on our floodplain committee. I'm sorry, when we went through the Welland River floodplain mapping, did we not add local or have a contact person that was added to that floodplain committee as part of that discussion or as part of that outcome from the relaunch of that mapping process? And should we be looking for people of those natures from St. Catharines and from Grimsby and Lincoln as well as part of that too?
Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. As part of the Welland River floodplain mapping committee, it was comprised of not only board members but local residents. Absolutely. I would seek the board's guidance in terms of any future terms of reference for a floodplain mapping committee.
Well, I think Bruce, Member Timms is going to knows where I'm going with this, but I think we actually probably need to start that out and make sure that we do have the appropriate people on there. Could also maybe suggest we defer anything in St. Catharines until the supervisor is appointed, but I won't do that this time.
All right, I'll take that as a rhetorical, Member Timms. Sorry, Member Quirk. Member Timms for the second time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is and has been a Walker's Creek Community Association and newsletter, et cetera, so I'll undertake to discuss with you and make sure we have that whole group involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the input and the insight. No further questions or comments. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. The second item, the next item is non-union compensation report. That report number 12-18 respecting non-union compensation be received, and that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board approve the recommended cost of living adjustment increase of 2.25% for non-union staff. I'll need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Member Quirk, seconded by Member Beattie. Questions or comments with respect to that? I'm going to go to the board first, Member Timms, and then I'll go to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the direction here and the rationale in the report, but I'm concerned that 2.25 is a little too high for my taste. I prefer the 2.0 for various indicators in the last little while where compensation has been running around 1.5 in a number of agreements around the province. So I will oppose 2.25, would seek to amend it to 2.0.
So before I recognize your amendment and put that on the floor, Member Timms, I want to hear from staff and certainly our CAO. I'll give him the opportunity to speak to to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate and understand the comment. I would also ask that the motion, the second part of that recommendation, not reference or suggest that this is a cost of living adjustment. So I think that should be changed, and that should actually be changed. Recommended increase of 2.25% for non-union staff for 2018 would be more appropriate. I would remind board members that we are in a unionized environment, and we actually have a collective bargaining agreement. And last year, for example, the union's increase was 1.75%. That was a negotiated increase. You'll recall that the board last year didn't approve that increase for management or for board, for that matter. Instead, you approved a 1.25% increase for management staff. If you put that even over 2 years, you're still looking at just a 3.5% increase over the 2 years. I think the 2.25% is entirely appropriate. It is consistent with the union, and certainly our management staff are one of the large reasons that you're getting the results that you have in terms of turning this organization around. I would speak very strongly, I would very strongly ask you, the money is budgeted for, was brought forward in the budget and calculated in that manner, but I would have, I would take great exception to you reducing this amount.
Appreciate those comments. Again, this is a board-driven process, so we respect those comments, Mr. Brickell. Would anyone like to put forward an amendment specific to Mr. Brickell's comments about removing cost of living adjustment, the COLA? I'll entertain that right now. Member Beatty? Okay, thank you. So that new second part will read that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority approve the recommended increase of 2.25% non-union staff. Can I get a seconder for that? Moved by Member Quirk as well. Okay, so that amendment is on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. So thank you for that amendment. I will entertain, I'll go back to Member Timms. If Member Timms wants to put any other amendments on the floor, I'll entertain those now. Member Timms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to amend the increase to 2.0% rather than 2.25.
Okay. I have, I need a seconder for that, Member Timms. Seconder once, seconder twice. Thank you, Member Diodati. That has been seconded by Member Diodati. That is on the floor for question or comments. Member Quirk, and then Member Beatty.
Thank you. I speak against the amendment. I think that when we went through the budget process, we knew that the compensation increase for union staff was going to be 2.25% this year. We went through the budget accordingly, allowing for the ability for non-union staff to also be 2.25%, so it has been in there. I think the problem we have when we do this sort of ad hoc basis of reducing what we give to management, not in line with what's going to the union staff, is that we get that compression issue. And that's going to lead to greater disparity as we go forward. And it will also put greater pressure on us to retain the staff at the management level. So I respect what Councillor Timms has done and on this issue across the last 4 years that I've worked with him at the region trying to contain costs. But I think even with that 2.25%, we came in with a 5% reduction in our overall expense to the taxpayer because of the work that this management staff has put together, including increasing our revenue streams at our revenue generating facilities. So I think there has to be some recognition of that as well, that that we're not just relying on the taxpayers to fund these, that there has been a lot of work done making this organization professional, as well as reducing its need to rely on the taxpayers for funding its operations. So I would not vote for this amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Member Quirk. Member Beatty?
I'm not going to support it either for a lot of the reasons what Tony said, but last year we made a decision to compensate our non-union at a lower rate than our union. That was part of the strategy of transition, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of debate on it, and you can't do that continuously, and this creates a better balance. So I suggest we vote for it and get on with it.
Okay. Member Beatty? No, I got you. Recognize Member Beatty.
I'll support the comments made by the two prior speakers against this particular motion and add the fact that we need to have recognition that this CAO proposed a model of senior management that had a reduction that basically is to the benefit of the organization, but the benefits that reduced staff has had are significant and positive.
Okay. Member Diodati?
I support all the comments that I've heard around the table. I just want to have the debate on it.
Thank you. Seeing no other further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment as proposed by Member Timms? Opposed? And that amendment is defeated. I will put the original motion back on the floor as amended by Member Beatty and seconded by Member Quirk. I'll read that out for the benefit of the board, that report number 12-18 respecting non-union compensation be received, and that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority NPCA Board approve the recommended increase of 2.25% for non-union staff. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. The next report, that report number 13-18 respecting the Burlington Beach Rentals Facility Use Agreement renewal be received, and that the NPCA Board of Directors authorize the CAO to enter into a one-year facility use agreement attached as Appendix 1 with Burlington Beach Rentals to operate at Binbrook Conservation Authority. Can I get a mover for that, please? Moved by Member Kasperset, seconded by Member Shurton. Questions or comments? Member Beatty.
I support the direction, but ask the question in terms of who covers the liability should any injury take place? Does that organization, or do we assume some liability?
Mr. CAO?
I guess because it's our property, we're always going to be included in that discussion. However, they do provide $3 million liability coverage. I believe it's $3 million liability coverage, and we are named as insured, as additionally insured on that policy.
Thank you for that.
Member Beatty.
Before I vote on it, did we have any complaints about the contractor?
Mr. CAO?
Not aware of any complaints about the contract. I know that it was having that option available at Binbrook was very popular. We continue to want to explore it further just to see where it can go, but still want to do it on a year-to-year basis for now until we determine, do we have the right revenues and are they in line with what's going on there?
And has there been any discussion on how it will impact on that floating water park that we put forward yesterday?
I don't believe we have any concerns about the compatibility of the two.
Okay.
The belief at this point, or the assumption that we're making, is that they will feed off one another and serve to be an enhancement to each other. I have no reason to believe otherwise. Obviously, the contracts we enter into, and that's one of the reasons we're keeping them to one-year contracts while we kind of figure out how these all relate to one another.
Member Shurton. Member Kasperset.
To the chair, to Mark. Were there any ramifications this year about the blue algae and the park being off access for swimmers?
I'll have Greg Fertney, our acting director of Watershed Management, comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there was an instance this past summer where the water was shut down for approximately a week due to blue-green algae, and it was tested by Hamilton Public Health as well as us, and it was cleared relatively quickly.
Member Kasperset? Okay. Any other question or comments? Member Timms?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Brickle explained a little bit, but why only a one-year contract?
Mr. CAO?
Thank you. That was actually a staff decision that they just want to make sure that we have the proper balance and want to see how these things do affect and impact one another or how they enhance one another. We also want to make sure, in fairness, that we're maximizing the revenue that we're getting out of these contracts and to make sure that it's fair so that it's a sustainable, ongoing initiative. Obviously, we want them to do well, but we want to do well with them as well. By entering into these partnerships, obviously, we don't take on the capital costs that go with it. We are able to create an enhanced visitor experience and to create more activities for our patrons. So all of that stuff is just stuff that we are taking a look at. I assume that if we are satisfied in the next year or two, we'll then start to look at maybe a 5 or 7 year contract.
Member Timms? Yep. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item, Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU update, report number 0918. That report number 0918, respecting the protocol for planning services between the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and Regional Municipality of Niagara, be received. That the board approve the draft protocol for plan review and technical clearance between the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and Regional Municipality of Niagara, attached to report number 09-18 as Appendix 1, and that the NPCA CAO be authorized to sign the protocol for plan review and technical clearance between the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and Regional Municipality of Niagara, attached to report number 09-18 as Appendix 1. Can I get a mover for that? Member Kasperset, seconded by Member Quirk. Questions and comments? We'll go around the table. Member Quirk and then Member Timms.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to report back to the other members of the board that this passed at Regional Council with a huge majority. It was 20-2.
23.
23-2. And the protocol was endorsed unanimously by all 13 planning departments, the region and the 12 local area municipality planning departments all endorsed the new protocol. And all that is needed now is for the authority to sign its share of it, and then we can implement it.
All good comments. Thank you. Member Timms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate there is this is first step is the protocol. The next step will be having municipalities sign the memorandums of understanding. My question is about does the local council get involved in do they have to have a motion to approve the signing of the MOU? Because St. Catharines City Council seem to have no knowledge or understanding of the MOU that we've had in the past.
So to answer that question, and I will refer to my own experiences, I am not a planner. I am not an engineer, but I do refer and defer to competent staff to put forward a report. I'm pretty certain that at that stage of this process, where municipal councils will get first glance of the new protocol and the new MOU, that their individual planning staffs will bring forward reports. At that opportunity, members of individual councils can ask questions, raise concerns, and either through resolution or through the direction of the Director of Planning in each one of those municipalities, that's how they affirm consensus. I'm imagining that's going to be the process going forward. If the CEO wants to comment a little bit more, perhaps.
So I think what happens then, and I want to express appreciation to David DeLuce. He's been our lead on this particular one. So David, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this. I believe that, first of all, we have clarity once you have passed this motion that the region and NPCA are clear about where they're moving on this one. I believe the relationship is actually through the region, and that all the municipalities will enter into that, have to be involved with that MOU through the region. We are just a party to that agreement. Perhaps, David, you can clarify beyond that. And the other point that I just want to make, because there were some comments made during the debate and discussion around the quality of planners, for example, that we have here at the NPCA. I want to assure you that we have professional planners on staff who are fully competent, who follow the exact same provincial legislation, who are still bound by their own designations and credentials. So they are fully competent, highly professional planning staff that we have here at the NPCA. So I just wanted to make sure that we correct the record on that. David, if you could just expand on the specifics of how the memorandum will come to be confirmed.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, our CAO is correct. The MOU is going to be examined later on this year to my understanding, we're targeting around mid-year that the MOU will be, a draft will be presented to the various councils for update. And yes, each individual municipality is a party to the MOU, so they will all have to, I would imagine, have resolutions passed at their councils to allow their mayor and clerk to sign the MOU, and that would also include the region of Niagara and the NPCA as well as parties.
Okay. Appreciate those comments. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to ask that staff confirm that with me. I had assumed that as well, but I just would like to be confirmed that St. Catharines will have a report and a motion and approve it. So if you could verify that process for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. What we'll do is further is we'll touch base with Mr. Mustacci and Mr. Giles at the region, understanding that they are the lead on this process as they engage our lower tier partners. We'll get confirmation from them as well. So I hope that helps, Member Timms. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Any other question or comments with respect to that report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Business in camera. We do have one additional agenda item that was added. So I will need a motion to move into closed session. Moved by Member Kasperset, seconded by Member Shurton. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We are now in closed session. Okay, we are officially back in open session. We do have a motion coming out of closed session that, Lisa, if you don't mind reading right now.
You want to get a mover in a second?
Yeah, put it on the floor, and then I'm going to move in a second.
The motion to be considered by the board is that staff be directed to verify the NPCA legal costs related to the Justice Ramsey court case, and then publicly release that information by the end of business day, Wednesday, January 24th, 2018.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Moved by Member Campion, seconded by Member Quirk. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question, ask for a recorded vote.
Board Member Beatty to the question? Yes. Board Member Beatty? Yes. Board Member Campion?
Yes. This is unanimous.
Board Member DeFrucio? Yes. Board Member Joyner?
In favor.
Board Member Kaspersets? Yes. Board Member McPherson?
Yes.
Board Member Maloney? Yes. Board Member Quirk? Yes. Board Member Shurton?
Yes.
Board Member Timms?
Yes.
And Chair Annunziata?
Yes, I will make special reference of Member Diodati, who had to leave 2 minutes ago. And maybe it can be recorded in the minutes that he was fully in support and fully in favor, and he's the one that brought this forward.
Thank you. So noted.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is new business. First, I will go to Member Beatty with respect to B project.
Very short item. There was a professor from Brock University who made a presentation to Waste Management. I'd like to have her invited to this meeting. Apparently, our landfill sites that have been rehabilitated are extremely positive sites for regeneration of bee populations. We're not talking about honeybees right now, the domesticated version. We're talking about the several species that do exist. It was very informative. We did, in our biennial tour, we saw about prairie grass and wildflower formation, et cetera, in another region. She's wanting to do the same thing and looking for some financial support, modest financial support in that regard. I think it's a very interesting short presentation and would ask that we put on the agenda for another meeting that she be invited. And then we give consideration to supporting the project she's talking about. It's the 3 landfill sites. It's the Glen Ridge one in St. Catharines. It's the one in Port Colborne and the one in Wainfleet.
Okay. Thank you for that, Member Beatty. Member Joyner.
Thank you. Can I ask that we look into also the landfill site on Park Road in the municipality of Grimsby too as well, please?
Okay. So noted. Member Kaspersets.
Yes.
New business.
I'd just like to discuss 2 items. If we could ask staff to investigate it. Entrepreneurial awards. Mr. Leonard Pacelli was nominated as Entrepreneur of the Year, actually acclaimed. And so I think that'd be a great event for us to attend.
Okay, I will entertain a motion if you want to put that motion on the floor.
Yes, please.
So moved by Member Kaspersets, seconded by Member Beatty.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
I sit on the nominations committee, so I'm wondering if I could declare a conflict.
Okay, so noted. Member Quirk has declared a conflict on that motion. I have a motion on the floor that the NPCA purchase a table.
Purchase the table, sponsor table.
Sponsor table at the Niagara Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. Do we have? It's $1,000. So just so there's full disclosure there, it's $1,000 for a table. And again, to Member Kasperset's comments, we do respect the hard work of Mr. Petticetti and all the involvement that he's had with the NPCA. So that motion is on the floor for question or comments. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you for bringing that forward, Member Kaspersets.
And the other item was if we could direct staff to investigate with respect to our permit fees, if we can try and have some type of a cost recovery in addition to the permit fee.
Okay, we'll take that as staff direction and bring the report forward. Pat.
Thank you.
Okay, there is one other item on the agenda. I saved it for last, and it's a notice of motion. At this time, I would turn to Member DeFrucio if he wants to bring forward that notice of motion. Mickey? Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Excuse me. So the notice of motion is actually complete. Mickey's formatted it. It's whereas I, Dominic DeFrucio, am celebrating my 24th year as a board member of the NPCA, whereas the annual opening of the 2018 rainbow trout fishing at St. John's Pond Conservation Area is fast approaching, and whereas we want to encourage our youth of either gender between the ages of 8 to 14 years old with proof to participate in the conservation areas, therefore be it resolved that I, Dominic DeFrucio, wish to donate up to $7,500 for 3 years, being 2018, 2019, 2020, and $25 for each year the angler who catches a trout has been tagged and dated by the NPCA or NPC Foundation. That if no winner in 2018, the $50 in the second year of 2019 and up to $75 in the third year of 2020, and that if still no winner in 2018, 2019, or 2020, a $75 donation will be made to either the NPCA or Niagara Peninsula Conservation Foundation.
Nice. Moved by Mr. DeFrucio, second by...
I'll second it. There's a correction there.
Okay.
$75, not $7,500.
Let's get clarification.
I asked Mickey, he said, is it 75? 70, yeah, but is it $75?
Yes.
For a total, okay.
Oh,
My
not
apologies.
$7,500?
Yeah.
There you go.
I was going like Mickey stepping up to the plate.
Mickey, thank you. Okay, so duly moved by Member DeFrucio, seconded by Member Beatty. Fantastic initiative, Mickey. I do recommend that this be passed on to our foundation as well. Yep, go ahead, Mickey. I'll let you speak to it if you want.
I'm donating $100 total.
Got it.
The other $25 goes for cash door prize at my wild game center.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, there's the hook right there.
Where's the $7,500?
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And just
Great job, Mick.
Thank you, Mickey. Just for the
7,500 would have
just
been
for the
nicer.
benefit of procedure and process, I want to accept that as a motion rather than a notice of motion.
Yeah.
So we'll back up a bit. Under new business? Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, that's fine then. We're good to go.
Thank you, Mickey.
There being no other further business, I'll ask for adjournment. Moved by Member Shurton, seconded by Member Kaspersets. All those in favor?
Yo.
We are adjourned. Thank you, board members.